I want to talk about the music for a second. And if this is a church, this is when we pass around. Somebody pass around the collection plate. Because when we talk about the music, we got them. So, how? Yes, the both of y'all. I mean, both the compositions and the soundtrack. Just how?
Well, Ted, it was such a great time for music. You got to figure when you're coming with all that, with the Maxwells, with the, just all that stuff, with the Jamiroquais, with the, there was all this great fusion. You've got like the jazzmatazz stuff coming out. You've got like brand new heavies, and then you have this movie where there's this whole world that people haven't seen on screen, and then. So the timing for the music was perfect. And then Ted had such amazing music already scripted as far as some of the jazz, and he had already was gonna hire Darryl. And so me knowing those big posts, and it was just so easy from my heart to fill in all the rest, like to go and sit with like a Leon Ware and Maxwell and have them redo something, because you were feeling it. You feel it, and feeling it in the studio with them, and then coming with that, and then going and having Lauryn Hill do like The Sweetest Thing, and she had just had a child, and I had just had a child, so I loved that song, and I loved the movie, and it was just really easy to slide things in, and plus it was like. These characters were like my people. That's my crew who I would hang out with. So it was like, well, I just had to just put in the music we would be listening to. And I still listen to this soundtrack all the time. All the time.
Darryl, I wanted to speak to you too, because the compositions are so thorough, the original music, that I was watching it and I was like, oh shit, that's Jeff Parker. Jeff Parker is in the house band. Jeff Parker's the guitarist and bassist for Tortoise. He's Chicago through and through. And he is in the house band in this movie. Please talk to me, brother. How? Again, how?
Well,
how?
I mean, actually, a lot of that was Ted. Actually, all of that was Ted. He's told me that he wanted me to play bass in the movie. And of course, I was, well, great, But all of the musicians, Teodris Avery on saxophone, Carl Allen on drums, yeah. This is the first time I scored a film, and he came to me and said that he wanted something like Lift from the Scaffold, Louis Malle, and I thought when I watched that movie, the music is so stark that I thought I feel like we need a little bit more flavor there. So basically we were hanging out every day, so he'd come by and bring some film, and I'd sit at the piano and play. Well, I think this is. This works here, and we basically. Ted is a musician. Yeah. Yes, he is. Even if he's not a performing or practicing musician, right. I think that's pretty clear with the music that he chose, and he's talking to you about colors, with the people that he chose. So that sensibility is there. It made it a real pleasure. And as I talked to other composers at the time that I was doing the film. And they asked me, well, what is the process like? And I told them, they said, that will never happen like that again. So I'm very thankful that, to have been part of it.
It's complete. The way we did the score was completely unorthodox. Yeah. I had this idea. This is the difference. I had this idea that I wanted the score to be reminiscent of Elevator to the Gallows or Lift to the Scaffold, this Louis Malle film that Miles Davis had scored. Now, he did this score a few months prior to him recording Kind of Blue. So this music was actually kind of a run-up to the modal style that he was going to perfect on this record. So I was like, well, we need to do something like that. The difference between working with creative people and working with studio executives is you go to a studio executive is, but not with the exception of Helena, of course, is you go, I have this idea, it should be like this Miles Davis, and they go, how does that work? I don't understand. What is that like? Explain that. We don't do it that way, blah, 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 blah. I go to Darryl. I go, yeah, man, we need to make this sort of sound like Kind of Blue. And he's like, oh, yeah, cool. So we got these musicians together, and we had no money to do this thing. And we did the whole, no money. I went to, I'm sorry to hog the mic, but like I went to a friend of mine is directing this $200 million tentpole that comes out in a couple weeks. He calls me up, he says, come down to the scoring session. I've never been to a big Hollywood scoring session. So I'm like, oh, I'll come. I go, it's an 80-piece orchestra at Fox, and there's like a zillion assistants, and I don't even know whose job it is to push record. We had no money. Me, Darryl, and Neil are copying the parts like at 2 a.m. at his apartment because we didn't have nobody to do that. That's a department of people on a studio picture. That's the three of us. So anyway, so we do this thing in like 3 hours. We cut the whole thing with the musicians watching the scenes in the studio and improvising based on these charts. And that's how we did it in about 3 hours. Then we went to lunch. Totally unorthodox.